Senior Director of Brand Strategy from Instacart, which my company network worked with on an amazing collaboration with Anwar Carrots, a streetwear brand, which was incredible, as well as Scott Sorochak, the Chief Revenue Officer at Brandwatch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks, everybody. So as I thought about the title coming over here, I wanted to just reflect back on a couple of concepts that I think relate to the title. So 30, 40 years ago, when CMOs would think about branding, it would really be about print, it would be about TV, it would be about radio. It was very simple. It was kind of one-way communication. I'm old enough to say that I was there when that happened. I'm sorry. And when you think about it today, right, you have individuals to consumers, brands to consumers, with hundreds of apps in their pocket that there's real-time communication to these individuals. And in some cases, we talk about AI, we talk about being cookied. It's terrifying when you are on one application and you get ads on another application and you're just talking to your actual computer. And so when I think about authenticity and cultural fluency, it's about now putting the power of the advertising back into the consumer's hand and thinking about now how that information can be piped back to the brand. And so I'm excited to talk to Rogelio about this and Instacart. So let's get started.
Thank you.
Great, excellent. So Rogelio, when you think about the prioritization of CMOs and marketing, there's such a large diversity of things that CMOs can be working on. How do you think about the prioritization of, you know, the cultural fluency and the brand authentication as it relates to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, look, we can all relate to your point where you're just saying marketing is becoming really complicated because we have so many channels, so many screens. We're fighting for attention all the time, right? We're fighting with not only a single screen and a single person, watching that TV show. We're fighting with that person watching a TV show, watching a cell phone, watching an iPad, and with our kids watching other things, right? And getting notifications all over. And so I think the 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 challenge that we have as marketers this day and age is incredibly challenging. It's not so simple, so straightforward as it was 20, 30 years ago. And so add that to like this big macro trend that we have, all the headwinds that we're facing, right? All the economic environment that we're facing. And I think as CMOs, the big question that you have is, well, what do I focus on and how do I focus on this? And what is more important? Is it this short-term sales, grow, next 3 months make the quarter work, or is it do I build big brands, build big branded campaigns? And I think what we've realized and what I realized is that's a false dichotomy in and by itself. I think there's this space where you can break that relationship versus performance or performance versus brand, and really marry both of them and understand how both work. And I think the power, all of it, and previous speakers spoke about this too, is how do you narrate and storytell across your channels, across the funnel for your consumers? How do you make an experience for your consumers, whether you're saying 20% off, download now, or come and buy it, or you're actually making this big brand campaign and working with Anna Carrots with Network. So I think there's an opportunity to connect the dots and narrate your story across all the different channels. And we had the saying way back when, don't show your guts to the consumer. I think oftentimes consumers can tell that, what type of content is coming from what type of team. And my mom can tell me like, oh, that's yours, but that one over there is not yours. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. That's the wrong way to do marketing. And that's the wrong way to think about marketing. Because I think from a consumer perspective, you should be able to tell and thread the needle and humanize a brand, whether you're saying 20% off, or you're saying the bigger brand purpose and the why you're here, right? So I think this false dichotomy that we have as marketing leaders is has to be broken. It's a challenge for marketers how to break that dichotomy and how to actually create content that narrates and storytells a great inspirational story.
So you talked about something that I wanted to key off of, which I think is the underpinning thread is transformation, right? And so when you think about transformation at Instacart, right, you come from some big brands. I don't know if people looked him up. He's way more popular than I am. P&G, PepsiCo, Nestle, Burger King. I mean, these are very, very, very large brands. And when you think about how you've transformed those companies and now taking that to Instacart. What are some of the lessons learned that you're now applying to Instacart?
Thank you. You're giving too much credit for transforming the companies, but okay. No, I think look, the what is really interesting when coming from more traditional companies, non-tech companies, I would say, P&G's, Nestle's, or even Burger King's of the world, that these companies know and have cracked the upper funnel. They've known and cracked storytelling and branded content. They know and cracked the awareness piece of the funnel, right? When you transfer to a tech company, what is really interesting is they've freaking cracked the lower funnel. Their performance marketing is phenomenal and it's really, really good for various different reasons. We could talk about the reasons why. And so I think there is a interesting connection between what the capacity. I was just in a conference a couple of weeks back where traditional companies or CPGs or QSRs or whatever, they're trying to crack a lower funnel. Tech companies are trying to crack upper funnel. And so I think there's a connection there, and there's a way to transform how we do marketing, and even there's a symbiotic relationship. Think about of Instacart, right? When you talk about a retail enabling company, we work a lot with the P&Gs, the Molson Coors, the ABIs of the world. They rely on us, and we can have a great partnership together so that we can work together on how do you do lower funnel, how do you do performance marketing, and we can rely on them, and they can teach us on how do you do upper funnel, how do you do awareness marketing, right? And so that connection is, to me, the transformational part of what I think tech companies are realizing this day and age, of like, yeah, like the product can tell the story, and engineering is at the forefront of tech, and product is at the forefront of tech, but you still need storytelling. You still need a brand. You still need some brand love, and people getting excited to use you. And I think that realization is coming to a forefront with companies around the tech industry, and everywhere, of like, oh well, yeah, like we can't just rely on making this beautiful app. We also need to be inspirational and tell a story, because the competition is there. On Instacart's case, we grew before the pandemic. It was great. It was a phenomenal company. In the pandemic, it was just this explosive growth, right? But then coming out of the pandemic, where a lot of people are seeing that growth, and they're saying, oh, like we can also do that, right? You have Uber Eats, you have DoorDash, they all delivering groceries. And so I think if you don't tell a story, if you don't narrate, if you don't become that inspirational brand, then it becomes a utility. Then it becomes a easy switch between consumers. And I think that's the biggest realization tech companies have. Whereas the biggest realization I believe CPGs or QSRs have is, well, we also have to understand how to drive more sales in a very performance driven way.
Interesting. So when you think about like great narratives around transformations that have happened within Instacart, maybe for all of us, can you give perhaps one or two examples of like campaigns that either would resonate with us as consumers that maybe have happened in the last year or so?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we had this awesome campaign last year. I'm biased, so I'll call it awesome. But we had this really good campaign last year where we came to this like human realization and human tension of, every single time you go to the grocery store, every single time you're buying something, if you're on the checkout line waiting for you to check out, you're seeing every people's carts, right? You're seeing what people are buying, you're seeing what people are consuming, and you kind of can tell like what they're buying it for, right? You can tell someone has kids, you can tell someone is going to a party, you can tell someone is having you know a big splash or whatever. And so I think within the retail industry, and within our world, we've realized that the cart itself is such a dry, uninspiring concept that we could, make it sexy again. And so I think there's, if you look at the marketing that was done previously from competitors or even from Instacart on how we reach out to consumers, how we storytell to consumers, we were saying we were either experiencing or focusing on how do you pick the products in the grocery store, or what do you do with the products, but you don't focus on the cart itself. So with that insight, we said, okay, how can we be culturally relevant? What is it that, now that we know what the human tension is, how do we bring that tension to life, and how do we become inspirational? And so we worked with multiple teams, agencies, and people, and thought, you know what, let's have Lizzo, who is this big cultural icon. And by the way, last year she was doing phenomenal stuff. She was launching her own shapewear brand. She was launching her new album. She was doing like a plethora of things. I don't know how she does it, but anyway. And so we were saying, okay, let's partner with Lizzo and create this world. And I also think someone said this before. Creating a world with a celebrity or an influencer that really resonates with you, and it's just not about paying it. Because yeah, okay, you can pay anyone, but you have to make sure that you resonate with that person, and that person resonates with your brand. And so, lo and behold, thankfully, Lizzo did. And so we worked with Lizzo in creating this magic world and magic experience, which we call the world is your card. And this world is your card. If you've seen the film was a 60-second film of Lizzo in a bathtub. She was sitting there for 24 hours, not 60 seconds, but she was sitting there for a long time. And it's every single thing she added to her card was bringing around her this new reality and this new experience, which was very submersive. And so we've kind of introduced a space where anyone can shop from anywhere, from your bathtub, from your car, from your toilet, wherever you want, and you can get groceries, you can get things, and your groceries that you get are telling a story. They're also telling you something, right? And so we're working on how to narrate the carding experience as a storytelling device, which we think could be a very powerful tool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do remember that ad. I would be remiss as a sales leader if I didn't ask, did you negotiate tickets and the agreement that you worked with them? Because I definitely would have gone to see Lizzo. Okay, a couple more questions, and then we'll open it up to the team. I think a lot of marketers are here, people that do cross marketing and co-marketing, and as you think within the Instacart ecosystem, in order to maintain that sort of brand authenticity and culture fluency, that's something you can control. You can control that within the four walls of Instacart. But when you partner, right, with other brands, you want to maintain that level of excellence around that. How do you think about the partnering, the co-marketing with other brands in that context and still maintain that sort of high level?
That's a great question, but I would debate if we can control it internally. Because as a brand marketer, even internally, you're getting all the pressures from people love marketing, and think they know marketing, but they also give an opinion, right? And so you have the finance person and the legal person and everyone, and they're great partners to have, but they also there's a murky world within marketing, which I don't think happens in other cross-functional teams, where people opine on the work and have an opinion, and it's often based on personal perceptions, which is great, and you can hear them out. So that is a challenge in itself internally. I think externally though, the partnering with someone that understands, that has worked with your brand, that understands who you are, that understands what you want to be, that understands your values and your purpose is incredibly helpful. I think it's consumers can smell it a mile away. You can tell when an ad is an ad is an ad, right? Like it's we can all be. I've often myself working in advertising. I've been watching a movie on Hulu or watching something on whatever, and being annoyed at the ads subconsciously every time I sing. Every single time I see something, I'm like, oh, like seriously, you're stopping my entertainment, but for this. And so I think it's important for us to think that people are not searching for us, and so the the closer you partner with people that make sense and that you can insert yourself organically in a conversation that makes sense, the more the bigger the chance you have of making sense to consumers, right?
That's great. That's really good. Um, Let me see. We have a few minutes left. Why don't we open it up to some folks in the audience? I mean, everybody here, I'm sure, has used Instacart at one point or another. So this is not a feature and functionality request. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. 100%, and that can make or break your whole. You can pay for a $50 million brand campaign, but if you have a bad experience with your shopper, then that breaks everything. It breaks the whole thing. So yeah, I think look, first and foremost, we see ourselves as a four-sided marketplace, right? Not We're not a consumer only marketplace. We're a consumer retailer, B2B, and a shopper marketplace. So we're creating a space for everyone to join and connect and make sure that they have a seamless experience. And so I think part of it is also creating an experience for shoppers and making sure that we are fine-tuned to their concerns and to what they need and how they need it, and how they can become the best. How can they deliver the best shopping experience for a consumer? Because I think, unlike Uber and Lyft, I think the challenge for us is Uber and Lyft have a very pretty straightforward approach. Not to undermine the business model, but it's a you're driving and driving is driving, and I think everyone can understand it. But I think when you go grocery shopping, everyone has a very different opinion of how they like their bananas, and everyone has a different opinion of what they think about their cut of cheese, or the thin limit, how thin your cheese should be. And so I think it's important that there's a little bit more nuance. There's a little bit more of a human touch and a human connection that involves our shopping community, that we think is not necessarily in other gig economy companies. But to your point, we bring in a ripe banana, and that kind of ruins the whole thing. And so there's a whole ecosystem and a space to um, treat shoppers with respect, treat them with the and meet them where their needs are, and make sure that they bring in the best approach in this marketplace that we're trying to create. Similarly, when it was a Burger King, it was the same thing with the restaurant employees, right? Like if you go to a drive-through, if you go to a restaurant, it's like the front line is the one that is giving that experience and that brand, and they're kind of verbalizing and kind of they're your experiential arm of that brand, right? And so in any company, in any brand, your front line is the most important thing, to make sure your brand is there, because you can do as many expensive campaigns as you want without really connecting to the front line, they'll just not be worth it.
Excellent. We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, how long do we have? I think a couple of things, at least from the marketing perspective, a couple of things. I think one is connecting the dots between upper funnel and lower funnel, and we're working with a model called Brandformance, which is branded content that performs, right? And so making sure that you tell a narrative and a story between the full funnel. And so that's something that you don't do on your first day, because you have 120, 150 marketers in the team. You have to make sure the way that you connect the dots between all the content that you're creating makes sense for everyone across all the channels, and it's a Herculean effort. And I think the other thing is making sure that you insert yourself and be part of culture, and make sure that people see you as not a utility, but also as an experiential space, right? So how do you insert yourself in the conversation? How do you insert in culture? And I think we have an awesome cultural, we have a head of culture that is always thinking about really fun, creative ideas that can insert yourself in that conversation in an organic, seamless way, without being like this breaking the experience for consumers. So those two things I think are our focus for the next couple of years. Um, we have to remember, Instacart as a true tech company before, we started without a marketing team. So like we're a 10-year-old company. The first, I would say, 7 years, we did not have a marketing team. The next 3 years, or the next 2.5 years, we had a performance marketing team. And so we were hyper optimizing ads on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. But that was it, right? And so we became really good at download now, 30% off, hyper optimizing it, and that's it. And then 2 years ago, when we started joining, and I joined, and the CMO joined, and everyone else joined, we're like, okay, so how do we build this team? How do we build more of a relatable content, and kind of move ourselves from the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rogelio. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Simon.